How's it going, everybody? CJ here, back with another video. I did the math. I wanted to try to see if I could figure out how much money was lost in the Magic economy due to the banning of Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, and Dockside Extortionist. Before I jump into those numbers though, hit that subscribe button if you aren't subscribed already. Like 90% of my viewers are not subscribed. Please just hit that button. It makes my life better. But let's talk about this. So, these three cards, all very expensive cards. Nobody cares about Nadu. I'm not going to be talking about Nadu that much. It needed to be banned probably. Like, that was a fine banning. It wasn't an expensive card. Didn't really affect anything outside the people that built Nadu decks because they spent the money to build the whole deck. However, I'm not going to be talking too much about Nadu. We're going to be talking about the other three because those three amounted to a substantial amount of money. In order to come up with my rough estimate to how much money was lost due to the bannings, I had to come up with some numbers because Wizards of the Coast doesn't publicly share their print runs. But there's different sources that have estimates, so I used a handful of different resources between Reddit, ChatGPT, and then numerous other websites that I found on Google to try to come up with pretty accurate ranges for how many boxes were likely printed for each set that these cards were printed in. And then I took the median number from that range and use that as my print run number. Then, Wizards of the Coast does post their pull rates. So you can pretty easily come up with the numbers for how many packs you need to open to get a certain card. It takes a little bit of finagling, but the numbers are there and you can find them. And after some math, you'll be able to figure that out. So the real estimated part is the print runs. And also estimating how much of that print run is collector boosters, to draft boosters, to set boosters, and so on and so forth. So my numbers are definitely a rough estimate, but I do think they're pretty close. If you know anything more about print runs, please let me know, and I can adjust my numbers accordingly to get a more accurate reading. But I think I did a pretty decent job here. Starting off with Dockside Extortionist, its first printing was Commander 2019. The numbers I was able to find online hinted at around 1 million units of Commander 2019. So I believe that means that there were about 250,000 decks, Mystic Intellect decks, that were printed, which are the decks that have Dockside Extortionist in them guaranteed. So that's 250,000 Dockside Extortionists there. Then it was also printed in Double Masters 2022, and it had numerous different types of printings in this set. There was the Double Masters Foil, Double Masters Borderless, Borderless Foil, and Etched Foil. So I had to do some finagling to try to figure out the numbers for each one, but the numbers that I came up with are 150,000, 52,000, 20,000, and 20,000, which surprised me a little bit, but their prices were pretty similar, so that does kind of check out. And only 3,500 Etched Foils. And the last printing of Dockside was from the list in Crimson Vow. It may have been Midnight Hunt, but it was one of the two. And so it was only able to be found in set boosters. There were a lot of set boosters for those two sets printed. And in every set booster, there's a 25% chance at a list card and about 300 list cards. So it came down to around 62,000 Dockside Extortionists were available from the Crimson Vow / Midnight Hunt list. I cannot remember which set it was. I went and inputted the prices before the banning and then the prices after the banning. And then I calculated the change in price. And then lastly, I used that change in price and the total amount that were available, the quantities, and found how much money was lost per type of Dockside Extortionist, as you can see here. And then I totaled that out, and that is how much money was lost on the market from Dockside Extortionists. I then took that amount and divided it by the total value of all the Docksides pre-ban. I weighted them based on the number of copies and everything, and it resulted in a loss of about 66% of the total value of Docksides in the economy. That's substantial. That's a huge drop. Down $33 million from Dockside Extortionist alone. Heads up, Dockside Extortionist had the smallest drop out of the three cards in the Magic economy. Moving on to Crypt. This was our most impacted card. This card had the highest total value along with the highest market share, and the drop made up for the majority of the total drop. The first version that we're going to talk about is the invention version. Based on my calculations, there's about like 6,700 copies in existence. Then we have the list copy, which is actually from mystery boosters. So then I had to go and find out the quantities of convention edition versus retail edition and try to come up with an estimate there. Luckily, once I came up with an estimate for how many boxes were made, it was really easy to find out how many mana crypts would have been created from those boxes, because the way that set worked, it was just a 1 in 121 chance of pulling any specific card in any specific slot. Then we have a couple of double masters. I don't know why I split them up here, but we have the double masters and the double masters foil. I already talked about how we found those. There was the media promo, which was pretty difficult to find ideas for the print runs, but it's an estimated around 5,000, give or take like 2,500. There's not a huge amount of them, but I think 5,000 is probably a pretty close number. Then we had the Eternal Master printing, which is another one of the easier ones to find out, since there's no special versions, and there was only one type of box. So I was able to come up with an estimation for the print run of that box, and come up with the pull rates of any specific mythic, and applied it to Mana Crypt, and that was pretty easy. The Judge promo, I was really surprised when I found out how many copies were roughly printed. The number I came to was 1,000. That seems low. If anyone in the Judge program knows more about how Judge promos are printed and such, this is an older Judge promo, so that may be affected by that too. But if there's that few, I'd be surprised. I figured I'd take the conservative number and I'd be on the lower end of the spectrum for how much could have been lost. Then we have the special guest printing, which were from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan boxes. You can get them in set boosters or collector boosters, and foil and non-foil. And then there's the neon ink ones. We're going to talk about the neon ink ones later. But for the regular special guests and the foil special guests, I came out with totals of 83,000 for the regular special guests, but only 3,000 for the special guest foil. That also felt a little low. I wouldn't be surprised if that number's higher, but that's what I ended up with. Maybe I miscalculated something involving the collector boosters, but I figured we'd stay on the conservative side. We don't want to overestimate this. I'd rather be a little under than a little over. Then we have the double masters, borderless and borderless foil. Again, they were both 20,000. And lastly, the neon ink ones from the special guests, Lost Caverns of Ixalan. These were really hard to figure out pull rates for. I couldn't find much online, and quantities were tricky. I think that there's a total of around 31,000 copies of neon ink spread across all of them. And I know that some of them were rarer than other ones, but I just don't know the exact numbers. So I'm actually disregarding these because they're so tricky. They're kind of weird. So these are not included in my total. Obviously, these would change the total because of how rare they are and how sought after they were. I don't think the price is going to drop that much. I think that these are also going to rebound pretty well and not take as hard of a hit as the rest of the copies. So all in all, we have about 550,000 copies of Mana Crypt on the market. We went through, did the math again, and that ended up being a total loss of just under $60 million on Mana Crypts alone. 60 million. That's a decrease of the total value of the Mana Crypts in the market of about 57%. That's scary. That's like crazy how much that dropped. And the last card is Jeweled Lotus. This one I think is going to end up getting hit even harder because there was no use for this card anymore. It was only able to do anything in Commander, and now that it's banned in the only format it can do anything in, it has no use outside of like Cube or Rule Zeroing it in, and specifically Commander Cube. So we have a couple printings here. First off, we have the Commander Masters. That's the first one I want to talk about. There's the regular printing from Commander Masters. I found about 120,000 copies is what my calculations come out to be. And then for the foils, we have roughly 42,000. The etched foils were much harder to find at under 10,000. And the borderless and borderless foils were pretty close to each other actually, with like 57 and 52,000. And this may be a shock, but the textured foil I found to have more copies on the market than the etched foil. Not by much. It was only about 12,000 textured foils is what my calculations came to. But that's a pretty significant amount more than what I found for the etched foils. And then we have the Commander Legends printings. There's the base version, which I found to be around 132,000 copies. The regular foil was 43,000 copies. The extended art at 66,000 copies, so actually more copies of the extended art than the regular foil, but the extended art foil were under 20,000 copies. This came out to a total of 554,000 copies of Jeweled Lotus on the market. After doing my math, we come to a total loss of about $35 million in Jeweled Lotuses. Only about a 50% decrease, which is the smallest decrease compared to the other two. I think this is the one that's going to keep falling the hardest. Like, this one has to keep falling. There's no reason people will hold on to these cards. I did see that one sold for $14. That's outrageous. Like, the regular Commander Masters, one of them sold for $14 on TCG Player. So if you take all these negative totals, we have a total amount evaporated from the market being over $127 million. That's an insane amount of money. That's enough money to buy over 541,000 collector booster boxes of Duskborn. Like, that's so much money. Insane amounts of money. Just disappearing. Poof. Gone. There were some major ramifications because of this. Who do you think owns the majority of the Mana Crypts, Jeweled Lotuses, Dockside Extortionists, like single entities that would own the most? Card stores. Card stores are the lifeblood of Magic because it's where you go to play Magic. It's where you buy your cards. A lot of retailers lost a huge amount of money because of this. And that's gonna really hurt. Like, that's gotta be devastating blows to these businesses. Like, some of their most expensive cards lost 50% of their value. That's nuts. It also creates a lack of faith with the customer base because, like, why would I go out and buy like a mana vault? That's another fast mana piece that could easily get banned off of this philosophy. And so I don't really want to buy that. Or a new set comes out and mana vault's the chase card. I'm not going to really be looking to buy too much of that set because if I pull the chase card, I'd need to flip it immediately. Otherwise, there's a chance it gets banned and then I'm out of luck. That's terrible. Like, me personally, very worried about other fast mana pieces like Chrome Mox, Mox Amber. You've got reserveless cards like Grim Monolith. All those can just get banned at any moment, and that's kind of scary. Another financial related consequence of this is reprint equity. Wizards likes to reprint cards like Mana Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, Dockside Extortionist to sell sets, like they have recently. All of these cards have been reprinted pretty recently as the chase cards of these sets, so that way they could sell more product. Losing out on, like, Mana Crypt, one of the absolute best cards from the reprint to sell a set, and that makes it so future sets that could have had a Mana Crypt in it, well, instead of a chase card, it's about half the price. Speaking about the fact that these were just reprinted recently, lends me to think that there's a non-zero chance that these cards were going to be banned prior to their reprintings, but Wizards said, no, wait until they're reprinted and then you can ban them. That's a little tinfoil hatty, but they've been talking about banning Dockside for a long, long time, and I know it takes a long time for sets to make it through all of the creation steps before they're even printed, like years. So there's a non-zero chance that Dockside was slotted in to be reprinted, and they said, hey, we're going to ban Dockside, and Wizards said, no, don't do it. Wait until we reprint it, so that way we can sell it again. And boom, then it gets banned. All three of these cards were printed pretty recently. Like Mana Crypt and Lost Caverns of Ixalan. You had Double Masters with Dockside Extortionist, and Jeweled Lotus and Commander Masters. I don't know if it's a coincidence or not that they were banned shortly after their reprints. That lends me to think that the One Ring is going to be reprinted sometime soon. It could easily be some Masters set that's bringing all of the Universes Beyond cards, giving them in-Universes versions, and then selling that as like a Master set. Seems like a smart idea. There's a lot of reprint equity there. And the One Ring would be the chase card for that. I wouldn't be surprised if they're not banning the One Ring yet because of the fact that they're going to have this set come out and reprinting it. And then after like a year, 6 months to a year after that set's done is when they'll just ban it because they already made their money off of it. I can see that being a thing. Another point I wanted to mention, they're banning Dockside, they're banning Mana Crypt, and they're banning Jeweled Lotus. All three are fast mana. They're going to be looking to ban other pieces of fast mana, I would assume. Why not Sol Ring? Sol Ring is a very similar card to Mana Crypt, except instead of it being in only a few people's decks, it's in every single deck. And a turn 1 Sol Ring can lead to some bad games, and it's the most widely available fast mana piece. If they really wanted to do something to help the format by removing fast mana, they would ban Sol Ring. Like, that's obvious. I don't know why they didn't do that if that's what they're trying to go for. It's really weird to me that they decided to ban Mana Crypt and not ban Sol Ring. Another thing in regards to the ban list is Rule 0. A lot of people are saying that they are just going to Rule 0 back in Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus and such. That's not how Rule 0 should work. Rule 0 should work the other way around. It should be filtering things out based on play preferences. So that way everything is available and legal, and you tailor what you actually play based on the group you're playing with. So like mass land destruction, that's always ruled zeroed out at the majority of tables. It's not banned, it's just rule zeroed out. You don't rule zero things in very often, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that now because of this banning. That's not how it should work. I really do think that the ban list should be very, very, very light and only cards that really make certain things overpowered. I don't think that cards like Mana Crypt and other fast mana pieces should be banned. And if they are, then they should just ban everything and we need a separate ban list for CEDH. Speaking of CEDH, there's a lot I'm gonna have a whole nother video talking about this, but the Dockside banning just basically made red unplayable, which sucks. And they didn't ban the only card that I think should be banned that's currently legal, and that's Thassa's Oracle. That's the only card that's currently legal I think that would be worth banning, and they didn't ban that. I don't know why. I don't know how that dodged the ban, because that's the most powerful card in the format. Instead, they banned some other cards. Weird. One thing to remember is it's not Wizards of the Coast's fault that these cards were banned. Like, they're not the ones that banned it. It was the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee is a separate entity from Wizards of the Coast. I'm sure that they have discussions between each other, but ultimately it is the Rules Committee's decision. So don't be hounding people at Wizards because they're not the ones that made this decision. They wouldn't make a decision like this because it's so bad for them financially. It gets rid of chase cards, it takes money out of the pockets of the people that play their game, it lowers the value of the economy. It's not something that they would want to do. It's not financially sound for them to do something like this. And Wizards definitely cares about finances. Let me know what you think about this banning in the comments section. I'll be doing another video later talking a little more about CEDH and how I think that might need a new ban list now. And then I'll also be talking later on after that. I have another video coming regarding how it's changing the market. I'm doing a little market series here, so be ready for that. I'll see you all next time. Peace out, everybody.